The day had started like any other in the quiet town of Rockford, where history seemed to cling to every brick wall and rusted street sign. But for Daniel Hayes, an ordinary 19-year-old with an unremarkable job at a local repair shop, life was about to be irreversibly altered. He had grown up hearing stories of the great General Marcus Kane, a decorated war hero whose stern face still adorned faded murals, and whose name was etched into the memorial at the town square. Most people treated Kane's legend like a bedtime story meant to inspire children, but Daniel never paid much attention. He was more interested in fixing motorcycles than in glorifying the past. That changed on a humid evening when Daniel found himself wandering beyond the edges of town, driven by little more than curiosity and a need for quiet. He stumbled into the outskirts of the Kane estate, a massive property that had stood abandoned for years, its towering gates wrapped in vines and its windows clouded with dust. Locals whispered about strange lights seen flickering from the house on stormy nights, rumors of soldiers sneaking in and out, but no one dared to get close. Daniel, however, was not burdened by caution. He had always been a tinkerer, someone fascinated by mechanisms, and when he spotted what looked like a rusted hatch half buried in the overgrown garden, instinct took over. He knelt, brushing away the soil until his fingers found the edge of metal, cold, heavy, and engraved with a symbol he didn't recognize, something like a coiled serpent biting its own tail. Heart pounding. He pried it open with a crowbar he carried for bike repairs, and with a hiss of stale air, the hatch released its grip. Below stretched a ladder descending into darkness, the faint smell of oil and iron rising up to meet him. Against all logic, Daniel climbed down. His boots landed on a concrete floor, and he found himself standing in a hidden bunker, walls lined with consoles, dials, and machinery that looked decades ahead of anything he had ever seen. In the center sat a massive device, part engine, part weapon, with glowing tubes that pulsed like veins. The machine gave off a low hum, like it was alive, and though he couldn't explain why, Daniel felt it was watching him. On a table nearby lay a leather-bound journal stamped with the initials MK, and when Daniel flipped it open, he saw blueprints for the device, diagrams annotated in the general's handwriting. The words chilled him. If this falls into the wrong hands, the nation itself will fall. Before he could process the meaning, the silence shattered, boots echoed above him, a harsh voice barked orders, and beams of light swept down into the bunker. Daniel froze, clutching the journal, realizing too late that he had been followed. Soldiers in black uniforms descended the ladder, their weapons trained on him, and one word thundered in his mind, louder than the hum of the device. Why was the military guarding a dead general's secret? In that instant, Daniel understood that he had uncovered something far greater than an old relic. He was standing at the edge of a truth powerful enough to shake a nation. Ethan barely slept that night, the weight of the strange metallic device pulling at his thoughts like a storm he couldn't escape. It wasn't just the object itself. It was the sense that it was never meant for his eyes, the way it seemed to hum faintly even when untouched, and the chilling knowledge that it had been deliberately hidden inside a chest buried under rotting blankets and war memorabilia in a forgotten attic. At dawn, curiosity overpowered caution, and he returned to the chest, this time more deliberate in his search. His hands brushed past rusted medals and faded photographs of his late grandfather, General Marcus Hale, until his fingers struck something hard-wedged beneath the wood lining. He pried it loose, a weathered leather-bound journal with the general's initials embossed faintly on the cover. The pages smelled of age, fragile and stained, yet the handwriting inside was sharp, precise, and urgent, as if every word had been carved rather than written. Ethan flipped through with trembling fingers, the entries detailing not battles or strategies as he expected, but experiments, sketches of intricate mechanical circuits, and coded passages that spoke of Project Sentinel. Each entry seemed to blur the line between invention and weapon, hope and destruction. One passage froze him. The device is not merely defense. In the wrong hands, it becomes a godmaker. Ethan's pulse raced as his mind tangled with questions. What device, what purpose, and why had his grandfather kept it hidden from the world? Tucked between the pages, he found a folded letter sealed in red wax, brittle yet intact. It wasn't addressed to military superiors, but to someone named Carter, the name underlined twice with urgency. The letter warned of betrayal, of surveillance, of men in uniforms that don't answer to the flag but to profit. Ethan's stomach turned. This wasn't just family history, this was a conspiracy, and it was one his grandfather had fought to bury. As he read deeper, he realized the journal wasn't just a diary. It was a manual, a map leading to something monumental. His instinct screamed at him to put it all back, to pretend he had never uncovered it, but his hands refused to let go. By the time the sun had climbed high, Ethan knew two things with certainty. His grandfather's death had not been the peaceful end of an old soldier, and the device in his possession was the key to secrets powerful enough to upend everything he thought he knew about his family, his country, and himself. The night air was thick with unease as Daniel sat alone in his small rented apartment, the general's journal spread out across his cluttered desk. He had spent hours poring over the faded ink and cryptic handwriting, trying to piece together the story that seemed half-truth, half-madness. Yet the more he read, the more a chilling clarity began to emerge. The journal was not just a diary. It was a set of instructions, a confession, and a map leading to something hidden, something the general had guarded with his life. The pages were filled with fragmented thoughts, warnings about the device, scribbles about enemies both foreign and domestic, and notes about secret meetings with men who were never named but clearly powerful. Daniel noticed repeated mentions of the vault beneath the mountain, a phrase that appeared more than a dozen times, underlined and circled in places. His fingers trembled as he traced the words. Realizing this was not the rambling of a delusional old soldier, it was a breadcrumb trail left for someone he trusted. As dawn approached, Daniel uncovered a folded sheet tucked inside the binding of the journal. Unlike the rest of the yellowed, fragile pages, this one was newer, its edges crisp, as if it had been placed there intentionally years after the original writing. When he unfolded it, he gasped. It was a map, crudely drawn, but unmistakable in its details. Mountain ranges, valleys, and a marked red X buried deep within a restricted military zone. The note scrawled at the bottom chilled him to the bone. If you are reading this, you are my last hope. Do not trust anyone in uniform, not even those who claim to be allies. The words weighed on him like lead. Daniel wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a spy. He was a young civilian who had stumbled into a game far larger than himself. And yet he couldn't walk away. He remembered the look in the general's eyes that night, the urgency, the desperation, as if he had been waiting for someone like Daniel to find this. But he wasn't the only one searching. The night before, while Daniel walked home from the archive, he had noticed a dark sedan idling on the opposite side of the street, its tinted windows reflecting only the faint glow of the lampposts. At first, he dismissed it as paranoia. Now, staring at the map, he realized it wasn't. The journal itself warned that others would be watching, waiting for the clues to resurface. And if the general had left this trail, then there were men, dangerous men, who would kill to follow it. Heart-pounding, Daniel packed the journal and the map into his backpack. His mind raced with questions he couldn't answer. What exactly was this device? Why did the general call it the last defense? And most importantly, why had he chosen Daniel, an outsider, to uncover it? The sun rose outside his window, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold, but Daniel felt no warmth. Instead, he felt the crushing weight of inevitability. He had stepped onto a path from which there was no turning back. Every instinct told him to run, to burn the journal and forget he had ever seen it. But something deeper, something almost instinctual, told him he was meant to see this through. As he zipped up his bag, a knock rattled his front door. Not the casual knock of a neighbor, but 3 sharp, deliberate raps. He froze, blood rushing in his ears. Slowly, he glanced toward the door and saw the shadow of boots beneath it. Whoever they were, they had come for him. And the general's secrets, once buried, were no longer safe. Ethan couldn't sleep that night, No matter how many times he turned his pillow over or tried to bury his mind in meaningless thoughts, the device burned in his imagination like a torch in the dark, demanding his attention. The old chest still sat locked in his room, its metallic weight almost humming as though alive, and he felt its presence pressing against him, as if daring him to unlock it once more. When he finally drifted into uneasy dreams, they were filled with visions of strange maps, shadowy soldiers, and a tall figure in uniform whispering words he couldn't understand. By morning, the unease hadn't faded, and when he stepped out to clear his head with a walk through the town, he noticed something that set his nerves on edge. A black SUV he didn't recognize parked a few houses away, windows tinted too dark to see inside. It was still there when he returned an hour later, and the moment his gaze lingered on it, the engine roared to life, pulling away slowly, deliberately, as though reminding him he was being watched. That was the moment Ethan realized the chest wasn't just a curiosity, it was a secret the wrong people already knew he had stumbled upon. Later that afternoon, as he sat at his desk pretending to work on school assignments, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stay out of things you don't understand. Put it back where you found it. His heart raced as he dropped the phone, staring at it like it was a venomous snake. Who could possibly know about the chest? He hadn't told anyone, not even his closest friend, and the device hadn't left his room. Panic settled into his stomach like lead, but before he could even form a plan, a knock at his door echoed through the house. Slowly, cautiously, he opened it, only to find an elderly man standing on the porch. The stranger wore a dark overcoat, his weathered face partially hidden beneath the brim of a hat, and his sharp eyes pierced into Ethan as though weighing his every thought. "You don't know what you're playing with," the man said in a low voice before Ethan could speak. "Your grandfather didn't want this burden passed to you. Lock it away and forget it exists, or others will decide for you." Without another word, the stranger turned and walked briskly down the street, leaving Ethan frozen in the doorway. He wanted to call out to demand answers, but something about the man's presence, his calm authority, his unspoken threat, stole the words from his throat. That night, Ethan sat by the chest with trembling hands, weighing the warning against his gnawing curiosity. His rational mind screamed to listen, to lock the device away forever and bury it under dust and denial. But his heart whispered that this was more than a relic. It was a key to something monumental, something tied not just to his grandfather's shadowy past, but to the country itself. The SUV returned that evening, parking briefly at the corner before disappearing again, and Ethan realized the decision had already been made for him. If the truth was dangerous enough that strangers lurked outside his home and anonymous messages tried to scare him off, then the truth was worth uncovering. Fear twisted inside him, but alongside it grew determination. He whispered into the quiet room, almost to the memory of his grandfather, "If you left this for me, then I need know why." And as the clock ticked into midnight, Ethan resolved he would no longer be a passive heir to a hidden legacy. He would chase the secret to its very end, even if it meant risking everything. Ethan sat alone in the dimly lit archives room, his fingers trembling as they hovered over the faded document spread before him. The silence was deafening, broken only by the slow hum of the old ceiling fan turning above him, as though the room itself was waiting for his decision. He had discovered enough now to realize that this was not just a relic of the past, it was a device designed with the power to alter a nation's fate. The files described it as Project Dawnbreaker, an experimental mechanism that could manipulate electromagnetic pulses to disable entire infrastructures without firing a single bullet. In the hands of the wrong people, it could plunge a country into darkness in seconds, stripping it of communication, defense, and even basic survival systems. Ethan's stomach twisted as he thought about the general, a man once celebrated as a national hero, who had clearly hidden this truth from the very government he had served. Why? Was it mistrust? Or had he feared the device would be misused by those in power? The room seemed to close in on him as he realized he had now inherited not just knowledge, but a responsibility too heavy for his 20-year-old shoulders. His phone buzzed suddenly, jolting him from his thoughts. It was a message from his friend, Clara, who had been helping him piece together the fragments of the general's life. They're watching you. Be careful. His breath caught. Who was watching? He rushed to the narrow window, pulling the curtain aside, and there they were, two black SUVs parked silently across the street, their tinted windows hiding the eyes that were no doubt locked on him. Panic rose in his chest, but then another feeling followed, anger. They wanted him to be afraid, to drop everything and walk away. But if he did, who would carry the truth forward? Ethan looked back at the documents, at the general's shaky handwriting in the margins, notes that spoke of regret, of warnings ignored, of a nation not ready for such power. He could almost feel the old man's presence urging him onward, trusting him in ways no one else had. Ethan stuffed the files into his backpack, his hands steady now, and glanced once more at the street outside. The cars were still there, engines off, waiting. He whispered to himself, "If they think I'm backing down, they're wrong." With that, he slipped out the back door into the night, his heart pounding not just with fear, but with the realization that he was no longer just a curious civilian. He was a keeper of a secret that could either protect his country or destroy it, depending on the choices he made next. And though the path ahead was shrouded in danger, he knew there was no turning back, because the truth he carried was larger than him, larger than the general, and perhaps larger than the nation itself. The night was heavy with tension, the kind of suffocating silence that made every creak in the house sound like a gunshot. Alex sat in his dimly lit room, the old journals and blueprints sprawled across the desk, the device's inner workings glowing faintly under the desk lamp. He had gone over every detail a dozen times, each discovery tightening the knot in his chest. This was no ordinary piece of technology. It was a weapon, one capable of crippling communication systems, shutting down defense grids, even plunging a whole nation into chaos without a single bullet being fired. And worse, someone within the ranks of power already knew about it, someone who wanted it at any cost. As Alex traced his fingers over the intricate designs, his mind kept circling back to the general's words written in shaky ink in the journal. If it falls into the wrong hands, the nation itself could collapse from within. The thought haunted him. That's when he heard the sound, a faint scrape like footsteps on gravel outside the window. He froze. His heart pounded against his ribs as shadows danced across the curtains. Reaching for the small flashlight he kept nearby, Alex killed the desk lamp and crouched low, watching as a silhouette lingered near the shed where the device had once been hidden. Whoever it was, they moved with purpose, not like a curious neighbor, but like someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Gathering his courage, Alex slipped quietly through the back door, every step deliberate, the boards under his feet threatening to betray him with a groan. The air outside was crisp, but it carried the scent of damp soil and danger. As he rounded the corner of the shed, he caught the intruder off guard, a figure dressed in dark, tactical clothing, mask pulled low over their face. They froze when Alex shined the flashlight on them, and for a split second, Alex thought about yelling for help. But then the figure turned, and the light caught their eyes. Familiar eyes, ones Alex knew far too well. His breath caught. It was Marcus, the man who had been like an older brother to him, the one who had guided him through the general's papers, who had encouraged him when the weight of the discovery became too much. Marcus's jaw tightened as he lowered his mask, his expression one of cold regret. "You weren't supposed to see this," Marcus muttered, his voice low, controlled, carrying a hint of guilt, but laced with steel. Alex staggered back, disbelief crashing over him. "It was you? All this time? You knew about the device before I did." Marcus's lips curled into a grim smile. "I knew enough, and I knew you'd find it eventually. You were always too curious for your own good." The betrayal burned deeper than any wound. Alex's mind reeled with memories, nights of trust, conversations where Marcus had seemed so loyal, so invested in protecting the general's legacy. Now, those memories twisted into knives. Why? Alex demanded, his voice trembling with anger. "Why would you betray him, betray me?" Marcus's eyes darkened, and for the first time, Alex saw the hunger behind them. Because power is wasted when it sits in silence, locked away in journals and dusty boxes. The general was a fool to hide it. But me? I know what this device can do, and I intend to use it. Not for a nation, not for glory, he stepped closer, his tone dropping to a chilling whisper, but for control. Alex's stomach churned as Marcus's words settled like poison in the air. He realized now that the greatest danger wasn't the unknown enemy lurking outside, it was standing right in front of him, a man he had trusted with his life. The weight of the decision pressed down on him. He could fight, he could run, or he could try to outsmart Marcus, but one thing was clear. The real war was no longer about protecting the general's secret. It was about surviving the betrayal of someone he once called a brother. The cold night air was thick with tension as Alex stood on the edge of the government's underground chamber, the hum of the general's hidden device resonating like a heartbeat beneath the steel and concrete. His hands trembled, not from fear alone, but from the weight of the choice now resting upon him. Whether to activate the machine as his grandfather had intended, revealing to the world the corruption that had been buried for decades, or to destroy it and let the secrets die with him. Behind him, Colonel Hayes barked orders, soldiers flooding the chamber with rifles aimed, their eyes glinting with loyalty not to the truth, but to the powerful men who sat above them in hidden offices. "Step away from the console, Alex." Hayes's voice thundered, his face a mask of rage and desperation, as though even he feared what the machine might uncover. But Alex felt something deeper stirring inside him, a connection to his grandfather's vision. This wasn't about politics or power, it was about justice, about showing the people that the lies they had been fed were nothing but shadows covering the crimes of men who had built their empire on deceit. The device pulsed brighter, responding almost as if it recognized him, the air of the one man who had designed it not as a weapon of war, but as a mirror to the truth. Memories flashed in his mind. The journals in the attic, the whispered warnings from General Warren, the strange sketches that made no sense until now. His grandfather had left it all behind for this moment, trusting that someday someone with the courage to face the truth would come. Hayes lunged forward, but Alex's voice cut through the chamber with steady defiance. "You don't control this anymore. The people do." His hand slammed down on the activation key, and in an instant, the chamber erupted in light, so pure it seemed to peel away the very shadows of the walls. Data cascaded onto the massive screens, documents, recordings, and confessions spilling into the public networks across the world. Within seconds, leaders who had sat untouchable were stripped bare before the eyes of millions. Secret deals, betrayals, names of the fallen used like pawns in their game. Hayes screamed in fury, ordering his soldiers to fire, but they froze, their guns lowering one by one as the truth filled their headsets, their loyalty cracking under the weight of undeniable evidence. Alex felt bullets whiz past him as Hayes tried to seize control, but the soldiers turned, surrounding the colonel instead, no longer blinded by his authority. Outside, cities lit up with alerts, news stations flooded with the revelations that had been suppressed for half a century. People poured into the streets, demanding answers, their voices rising in unison like the roar of a tidal wave. Alex staggered back, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken as he watched the machine power down, its purpose fulfilled. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber, broken only by the sound of shackles being clamped onto Hayes as the soldiers led him away, his threats fading into echoes. Alex knew his life would never be the same. He had become the vessel of his grandfather's legacy, the one who shattered the silence and brought the truth into the light. As dawn broke over the horizon, washing the land in a golden glow, Alex stepped out of the bunker, breathing in the air not of victory, but of renewal. The nation was trembling, yes, but no longer under the weight of lies. For the first time, it was trembling with the hope of something new, a chance to rebuild, to heal, to remember. Alex whispered into the wind, almost as if his grandfather were listening. "It's over, but it's only just beginning." And as the first cries of revolution reached his ears, he knew that the reckoning had arrived, not with the fury of war, but with the unstoppable power of truth.